the stretch, and California Chrome comes roaring home with Arrowgate coming after him on the outside. A furlong to run. California Chrome put to the test. Arrowgate full out. Can he stick with him? California Chrome. Arrowgate still coming. California Chrome. Arrowgate steals the show in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
This is Saratoga track announcer Larry Colmus, and you're listening to the Paddock Pass on 104.5 The Team.
104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. Happy to be joined by TVG's Andrew Champagne. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew Champagne. Andrew, it's been a while since we talked, man, but a lot has happened. A lot of stuff going on with the Breeders' Cup. Now we're up to Eclipse Awards weekend now. Before we jump into what exactly is going to happen in the Eclipse Awards, we're a week away from the Pegasus Cup. My question to you is, everyone's talking about the big names, Chrome, Arrowgate. Is it just these two, or can you see anybody else challenging these two next weekend at Gulfstream Park?
I would really like to tell you that there is some Cinderella story that's going to come out of nowhere and win the Pegasus World Cup, but the fact is it's Chrome and Arrowgate and everyone else is fighting for third money. Now, third money in a $12 million race is a lot of money, and that's why you're seeing the full field. There are some decent horses in that field. Saratoga residents will remember Shaman Ghost, who won the Woodward over Frosted. There are a couple of other nice horses in that race. Keen Ice was, of course, the horse that beat American Pharaoh in the Travers. There's also a horse from the Todd Fletcher barn by the name of Neolithic, who could be a horse to watch going forward. I think he's a pretty talented racehorse, but Chrome and Arrowgate are just at another level right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if people try to bridge jump the exacta, so to speak. They're just playing the exacta, boxing California Chrome and Arrowgate a lot of times in an effort to hit, because those two horses just seem to be on another level compared to the other handicap horses, not just in that race, but across the country as well.
So let's move to this weekend, Gulfstream Park hosting the Eclipse Awards. Let's start with the one everyone's talking about, the Horse of the Year. It actually reminds me a little bit, Andrew, of the Heisman vote, where you had Lamar Jackson started off great in the beginning of the year, almost like Chrome did, winning in Dubai. And then at the end of the year, you had Deshaun Watson comes back and he wins a national championship. And then just like Arrowgate does, winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. So my question to you is, who actually is going to be Horse of the Year, and how are you looking at their seasons respectively?
This is my thinking, and I know it's not a unanimous decision, but Horse of the Year encapsulates the entire campaign, not just one or two races. And as such, for that reason, California Chrome to me is the Horse of the Year. Now, I respect Arrowgate a lot. This is a horse that came a long way in a very short time period. The horse won the Travers and the Breeders' Cup Classic in starts 5 and 6 of his career. Not of the season, but of his career. So obviously there's a lot of talent there. But based on past precedent, California Chrome wins Horse of the Year. And I'm going to go back a couple of years because a similar situation happened when Zenyatta won her Horse of the Year. Nobody was saying Blame should have won Horse of the Year, even though Blame beat Zenyatta in their lone head-to-head meeting. If you vote for Arrowgate here, that's a tacit mindset that the Eclipse voters got it wrong when Zenyatta beat Blame several years ago, despite Blame winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. So I think California Chrome wins Horse of the Year and does so by not a blowout margin, but by a considerable margin.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be really close, Andrew, because you have, if you look at their records for everyone, Horse of the Year is Arrowgate, California Chrome, and Songbird. They're 19 for 22 this season, and two of them lost in the last weekend, you would say, that voters actually care about in the Breeders' Cup. And, of course, you look at their seasons altogether, all of them are really, really impressive. So this weekend could really turn out to be, I don't know if you'd be shocked if Arrowgate wins this, but I agree with you that in the overall scheme of things, California Chrome had the better year.
It's an overall body of work perspective for sure. California Chrome won in Dubai. He won the TVG Pacific Classic. He won a couple of other graded races. And he didn't just beat any tomato can opponents. If you look at the TVG Pacific Classic, the horse that ran second was Beholder, who would go on to win the Breeders' Cup Distaff over Songbird. The horse that ran third was Dortmund, and we all know how good Dortmund is. So, again, I think California Chrome is a pretty heavy favorite to win Horse of the Year for the second time.
Talking to TVG's Andrew Champagne. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew Champagne. And, of course, the Eclipse Awards this weekend. They start at 8 o'clock. You can catch them on TVG2 and, of course, DailyRacingForm.com, among other outlets. Now, the comparison I made in the previous question, Andrew, was about the Heisman Trophy and about ebbs and flows throughout the year. The same comparison can be made to the trainers, because local trainer Chad Brown overall through the entire year had one of the best seasons we've seen in a long time. But Bob Baffert comes around with Arrowgate, wins the Travers in record fashion, and then comes down and beats California Chrome in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Did Bob Baffert do enough late in the year to take away the trainer title from local trainer Chad Brown?
I don't think he did. We talked before the Breeders' Cup about what Chad Brown needed to do in order to cinch the Eclipse Award for top trainer. And I think he did it because he won a Breeders' Cup race with a horse by the name of New Money Honey, who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. I think he needed to win one Breeders' Cup race in order to cinch it. Otherwise, Baffert may have had a chance to steal it from him. I think Chad Brown did enough.
So let's look at that with his 2-year-old filly, New Money Honey. Now, I know you were really passionate. We were talking before the interview about this 2-year-old filly crop, and a lot of people are talking about Lady Aurelia for this. What is your feeling on this 2-year-old filly distinction in the Eclipse Awards?
Well, I think this is probably the most interesting category to watch. A lot of these categories are pretty cut and dry. We know Classic Empire is the champion 2-year-old male, for instance. Arrogate's going to win champion 3-year-old male. Songbird will win 3-year-old filly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For 2-year-old filly, we have Champagne Room, who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, but did so over a group that wasn't exactly setting the world on fire in terms of public impressions. New Money Honey won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, but she's a turf horse, and a lot of times this award doesn't go to turf horses. Then you look at Lady Aurelia, who won her lone race in America and then went elsewhere for the rest of her campaign. Now, it's a pretty interesting double standard that we've got here, Brian, that I want to talk about in a little bit, because Lady Aurelia is up for 2-year-old filly despite never having won a stakes race in America. If you look at the male turf horse category, you see Highland Reel nominated. Highland Reel did win the Breeders' Cup Turf, and he ran a number of big races overseas. For instance, he was second in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, which is the biggest race in Europe. So if you vote for one and not the other, it's a little bit inconsistent. And I'll be very interested to see how Eclipse Award voters vote when it comes to that potential double standard.
So, I mean, that's really interesting to look at. What we look at another category is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, Classic Empire. It looks like he's going to win 2-year-old male. Now, my question to you is, how good is this horse? Are we looking at another possible Triple Crown candidate, or is it too early to really tell?
It is much too early to tell, but at this point, Classic Empire appears to be head and shoulders above the rest of the 3-year-old male crop. If you look at the Sham Stakes that was run a couple of weeks ago at Santa Anita, the winner of that race was Gormley. Gormley finished double-digit lengths behind Classic Empire in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which was contested at Gormley's home track. You look at a couple of the other horses that Classic Empire beat that day. Not This Time had a lot of talent, but may not have been the soundest horse. He's been retired. Practical Joke won the Hopeful in the Champagne Stakes. He's a legitimate racehorse. Cinderguard may be a sprinter, but he's a fast horse. Then you look at Gormley, and there were a couple of others. That wasn't a field of tomato can opponents that Classic Empire beat on Breeders' Cup Day. He's definitely the leader in the clubhouse right now. Odds are that he will make his 3-year-old debut in the Holy Bull at Gulfstream in a couple of weeks.
Talking to TVG's Andrew Champagne. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew Champagne. All right, Andrew, got a couple more for you. Just want to throw one of the ones I was interested in is actually the female turf horse category. And I'm a big fan, obviously, being the local trainer, Chad Brown, having Lady Eli, Tepin, and Miss Temple City. I went Lady Eli here. I don't know if my heart just kind of gave this to me with her comeback this year, missing the first one at Saratoga, but then coming back and winning again at Belmont Park. She just missed in the Breeders' Cup. What exactly was your opinion on this category?
I respectfully disagree. Lady Eli is probably the best story in horse racing of 2016, and I don't think it's particularly close. The fact that she came back and was anywhere remotely close to the horse that she was at ages 2 and 3 is fantastic, and that's a stellar training job by Mr. Chad Brown. But Miss Temple City and Tepin did something that Lady Eli didn't do. They beat the boys. Tepin went all the way over to Royal Ascot and did so without Lasix. Miss Temple City did so at Keeneland. She beat the boys a number of times and she did so trying to get away from Tepin, who was running against fillies and mares. So I would actually go Tepin, then Miss Temple City, then Lady Eli. But, of course, there's a respect for everything that Lady Eli was able to do, and a huge tip at the cap to the connections as well. She'll be running again in 2017, and hopefully she stays in her top form.
Yeah, my heart goes there, but, sometimes your heart just grabs the best of you, Andrew. It's okay. We go from the horses here to the guys riding the horses, the top jockey. Another one here I'm going to go, I think it was really interesting and pretty easy for me to go Mike Smith here. He wins a ton of grade ones, comes to Saratoga, wins the Alabama, wins the Travers in record fashion, and, of course, wins the Breeders' Cup Classic. Javier Castellano is still one of my favorites. Jose Ortiz had a great year. Can you see anyone else winning besides Mike Smith in this category?
Absolutely I can, and for one simple reason, that being Mike Smith didn't ride a lot of horses this year. Mm-hmm. He made it count when he got in the saddle, however. He is a money rider, but he's not as young as he used to be. This is a guy who doesn't have to ride every race on every card every day. He can pick and choose the horses that he rides, and the proportion of races that he won that were grade one races compared to everything else is mind-boggling. Having said that, I would go with Javier Castellano there simply because day in and day out, for my money, he was the best rider in the country, and the stats back me up on that. Another huge year for a guy that's won a couple of Eclipse Awards in the past.
Always great insight from Andrew Champagne. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Andrew Champagne. Andrew, I appreciate you giving us the time, man, getting us ready for the Eclipse Awards this weekend. And, of course, we'll probably talk right after the Pegasus Cup coming up next week, one of the richest race in North American history. Thanks for the time, man.
Always happy to stop by. Take it easy, Brian.